Good morning, everyone. I'm Maggie Gallagher, president of the Stevie Awards. Thank you for coming out on this brisk Friday morning for the second part of the Women Future Conference. Some of today's topics include cross-cultural communications, the power of influence, building communities, customer experience, and case studies from Stevie Award for Women in Business finalists. We would like to thank our sponsors, the U.S. Department of State, and our media sponsor, Enterprising Women. We would also like to thank our advisory board for helping us put all of this together. Refreshments and snacks will be available in the foyer during the breaks. Some highlights for me personally yesterday were getting to meet many of you, learning about how AI is infiltrating our life, specifically in the realm of shopping, how to navigate career changes and trends, and how women can get more involved in male-dominated industries, specifically with international trade. We would also appreciate if you fill out this survey in the Women Future Conference app, letting us know what you liked and what you would change next year. We also have a place to suggest speakers that you'd like to see next year. And now I would like to introduce today's keynote speaker, Selena Rezvani. Selena's dual mission is to empower more women to reach for top leadership roles, and to help employers make bold bets on female talent, creating forward-thinking cultures. Selena teaches thousands of professionals each year to negotiate leadership paths on their own terms. She's the author of 2 leadership books, Pushback, How Smart Women Ask and Stand Up for What They Want, a bestseller, and The Next Generation of Women Leaders. In 2018, Selena gave a TEDx talk entitled Interrupting Gender Bias Through Meeting Culture, which was recognized with a Crawley Journalism Award. Now, what's the accolade she's most proud of? One time she won a mango eating contest. Let's welcome Selena.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie, and welcome to all of you. Good morning. Before we talk today about how the future of work is decidedly female, I want to take you back to my storied past. A little bit of my storied past, so you can understand the lens I'm coming from today. I'm from the great region of Philadelphia. Anyone else? Not even quite close. Okay, all right, well, home to more than one delicious, addictive snack, as you can see here. And early on in my career, I had this great opportunity to study the discipline of social work. Maybe a little unexpected, a little unlikely at a conference like this to hear that. But what I really loved about social work is the central role that human relationships play. That no matter what issue you're trying to solve, you can't escape the human element, even in trying to solve for the future. I also loved, as an undergrad student, as a graduate student, learning the ins and outs of social work, that it's inquiry-based. There's this belief that through the right, powerful questions, you can overcome the stickiest, worst problems, right? Really resonated with me. There was only one problem. I could not leave my job at my job. I couldn't, whether I was counseling crime victims, individuals who were HIV positive, homeless women with persistent mental illness. I could not leave that job at that job. I was thinking night, weekend, day about those grave issues that my clients were facing. And I'm sure you can relate to the feeling of maybe biting something off, thinking it's one thing, and finding out it's entirely something else. Yeah? Right. Well, I have the utmost respect, by the way, for people who can do this work and serve populations who desperately, desperately need them. But it was becoming clear to me, I was not one of those people. I needed to create a new future of work for myself. And so in a dash, I was looking at every job I could think of. I was looking at every website, applying for jobs I had no business applying to. Right? No, I'm not an environmental engineer, but still I was looking at that kind of job posting. Any guesses what website I end up striking gold? Any guesses? It's kind of a unexpected one. Believe it or not, it was Craigslist. Yeah, Craigslist. And there I saw an opportunity at the Great Place to Work Institute, a company, a management consulting firm in San Francisco that ranks the 100 best places to work in America list for Fortune. And their sole mission is to increase trust in the workplace, to use inquiry, to use diagnostics and surveys to measure how employees are feeling, to raise up the employee voice and help leaders do better in their cultures. And how lucky was I to go after that job and to get it and have a great proving ground to learn about upping culture, making company cultures better. Well, I had this inkling as I was doing this work, I think I could be a little bit better at this, more effective, if I could speak the language of these leaders I'm working with. And what language is that? It's not social work. It was business. And I really didn't have that vocab. I didn't have those terms down. I didn't know that. So I started to pursue an MBA. I went to Johns Hopkins, and I picked this program specifically because you had an opportunity to mold some of your own learning, to direct some research, 2 research projects. And I have to tell you, in going to business school, it was sobering. There was some heartbreak involved, and for me, that heartbreak was looking around and seeing that in the most celebrated companies we were studying, there were 3% women leaders. Man, did that hurt to look up and see as you're learning in this laboratory of what business is all about. That the case studies we read teaching us how business works rarely had female protagonists struggling with real business issues, showing how they rose up. Even among my educators, I had 1 female professor in the 2 years I was there. What's up with that? Well, I was very disheartened, but I was motivated too. And so I went to that 1 female professor. Her name was Lindsay Thompson. And I said to her, Lindsay, I know just what I want to do for my research. I want to interview some of these top women leaders who've made it, these rare unicorns, and see what makes them tick. Understand, what they have in common. What advice would they give to women rising up, who have big ambitions and sights? And I'll never forget what she said. She said, Selena, I'll approve your research on one condition. She said, you have to go after the whales. You have to go after the women you think will say no. And I'm so glad she gave me that advice, because I did. I pitched all kinds of women, and by and large, they said, yeah. They agreed to these one-on-ones. The CEO of the Washington Post, the president of the LA Dodgers at the time, the CEO of Charles Schwab, CFO at Nike, and on and on. And man, that changed my life. It changed how I see power, my own self-leadership. And I knew I'm not that special a snowflake. There are other women who need to hear the same message, who could use the same message. And so I pitched that to a publisher. It became my first book, The Next Generation of Women Leaders. I quit my job. I focused on women and leadership, and it led to a second book, Pushback, about women and the power of negotiation in our everyday careers. Negotiating things on our terms, not just conforming to the mold. And that book came with a bonus. Guess what it was? Twin babies. At the same exact time. So I'm not sure I recommend doing it like that exactly at the exact same time, but really amazing, obviously, experiences in their own rights. And it's led to this career of getting to consult on culture at big firms, at little firms, even doing it on my own, within my own company. And it's all at this intersection, this hybrid of women, leadership, and culture, helping leaders raise those cultures up, using some of that social work skill set that I wasn't sure I could apply anywhere else, but that it ends up I use every day. I use every day. So as we talk today about the future of work and creating one that's really gender equal, there are certainly things in that conversation that our society needs to do better. I can speak to that as a mom to boy-girl twins. Even today, there are so many prescriptive stereotypes about how to be your gender. There are certainly things our country needs to do. You know, guaranteed maternity leave comes to mind as a huge, important gesture we're lacking. But today, like a laser beam, I would like to focus on what our work cultures can do. What our work cultures can do to change the future of work so that we're not just kind of employing women, we're celebrating them. We're celebrating women's contributions and talents that they bring to the job every day. As we do that, I want to ask you to whip out your smartphone. This is that kind of workshop. It's okay that you pull out your phone, and I'd like you to go to pollev.com/Selena. You'll see an anonymous poll there, and answer this question as we talk about culture. What's a clue that reveals company culture for you? Imagine you're interviewing at job 1, 2, and 3, and you're using your spidey senses to understand what each culture is like. What are those things you're listening for and looking for as you do that? And we're going to come back to your answers in just 1 minute and see what you all have to say. They will show up there for us. As we do, I want to share a little bit of some of the official answer, and this comes from one of the foremost thinkers on culture, Edgar Schein. Part of what makes up culture is artifacts, these visible, visual elements. You know this when you walk into a workplace or a building and right away you see the environment they've created. Is it fun? Is it formal? Is it stuffy? You know, is it relaxed? Those many visible cues, the website, the way people dress, the stories people tell. When I go into company cultures, I find when I ask them one question, what are the hero stories around here? What are the celebrated stories around here? It's often men who are the protagonists of those stories. You know, so-and-so pulled an epic all-nighter to lasso in this hard-to-get client. Or so-and-so parachuted into, you know, the Chicago office and worked all weekend to turn around this failing product. We need more women in those hero stories, and we need to look at what we're celebrating in our cultures. Here's another piece, and it's values. It's values. These are more like the stated philosophies and mottos, you know, the statements companies make in their annual report on the website. Anybody remember what Facebook's old motto used to be? Yes, move fast and break things. What does that mean? What does that mean? Yeah, make mistakes. We're in such a cutthroat innovation kind of climate that go ahead, experiment. Do it quickly, and it's okay to make mistakes. A really evocative, strong culture statement, isn't it? There's one more piece, and it's assumptions, those everyday assumptions and norms in a culture. And these are underneath those public statements and philosophies. These are the lived, real deal, everyday experiences. And usually employees know when there's a rift between these last two. When we say we're one thing, but then we act a totally different way. And they're so ingrained, these assumptions, that usually people in the group, in the organization, they don't even know that some of those norms exist. You know, because it's just such a normal thing. It's how we get work done here. It's not till an outsider comes and says, oh, it's culturally normal here to come to meetings 10 minutes late. You know, or it's culturally normal here for seasoned top-level folks to talk over the junior people in the room. Oh, okay. you start to see some of the key pieces of culture. Let's see how you all added to this definition. Looks like we're still looking for responses. I'll ask you this. Why don't you just shout out? What are some of the things you're looking for as you do this with culture? Yeah, in your best outdoor voice. Awesome. That's such a great comment, especially the piece about access to the top. Because how many times have you gotten a memo with a major announcement and at the end it said, please come see me if you have any questions. And yet that's not always what people really mean, right? It's just there. Excellent. One more.
I would say diversity in the executive leadership team, because that it's a culture of thinking differently and being open to different ideas and thoughts. It's not a single stream mindset.
I love it. What an instant visual clue, right? How much diversity there is in that top team. Yeah.
So I've seen differences on social media, like Glassdoor and Indeed, where you see the differences between high and low scores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So now you don't even have to talk to another human soul, right? You can go and see on Glassdoor, there are 3, there are 5. Well, that's important to know. One more?
For me, I noticed that the use of the word thank you within the normal, everyday, not stand up and speak and say thank you for attending, but just the everyday interaction with employees certainly comes from the top. And I used to work at Hallmark.
Wow.
In Kansas City, and I was struck by how it then, when I was there anyway, it was very polite, and that did come from the top. And because when I left, I was surprised that it wasn't normal company culture everywhere.
Right, right. Ouch. We feel for you going to that next job, right? After this gratitude, based culture, and maybe it's not quite that nice at the next one. That's lovely. I love how you explain that kind of cascading effect that happens in culture sometimes, where it's just the norm. It becomes the norm. Excellent. Well, in our short, I was going to say power hour, but power 45 minutes today, I want to share with you 4 ways cultures can be especially women forward, especially future focused. And we're going to talk about this by being more co-creative in the approach that companies take, i.e. including women more in the decisions that affect them, in the issues that affect them, being more transparent and open as cultures, getting real about this thing called FaceTime, the number of hours we spend in an office and the kind of burden that creates. And last but not least, expanding that spectrum of the way leadership looks. What comes to mind when we think of how a leader should behave and act? Please interject today. I want to hear from you. I think everybody wants to hear from you, so do jump in, call out if you have a comment. As we do this, to set the table, I want to get real about some of the future of work trends that are especially important to know specific to women. And here are some you may have experienced yourself, okay, especially as they relate to culture, which is when we look at STEM, when we look at many industries where women leave that industry, they'll often say culture is the #1 reason. We see that in tech. We know today at work that women pay a higher price for this always-on work culture where your job is basically in your pocket, right? An arm's reach away at any time. Women are almost navigating 2 different cultures, home and work, and we know they're putting in more hours, more work at home than their partners. That creates a real tension. This you may know, this you may live, this you may have seen, but here's some of the stuff you might not know. 58% of women work in industries with the highest risk of automation. Right? And so women are these kind of bookend populations in the future of work conversation. They're both in some of the safest industries and in some of the most vulnerable to being outplaced, to being automated. The backdrop here is women are the most educated cohort of all time in this country, outperforming men consistently in school, and yet the real shame, the upsetting piece here is women aren't really reaping this benefit of their education in the workplace. Not in terms of reaching leadership ranks, being part of top-level decision-making, getting paid the truly competitive great pay. Let's look at how this breaks out a little bit. We know women are 94% of areas like clerical work, admin work, and because of that, we know in this particular industry, it's got a very high risk for automation potential, 60%. On the flip side, we see lots of women in healthcare. 70% of healthcare workers are women, considered much safer, right? Because all of our boo-boos are not going anywhere anytime soon. This is the last piece I want to show you around some of these future of work stats that are sobering. Just over a quarter of science and engineering roles are held by women. The rub there is that these are the roles that forecasters tell us are highest growth, are highest paying, I would argue high power, going to shape the future. How do we create cultures in other fields, right, that aren't just including women. Women aren't just participants, they're leading the conversation, right? They're creating the future. And so here are some of the ideas I have from my time going into companies and doing focus groups, doing surveys around what the best of the best do and what those who are struggling can do better. And one is to take this more co-creative approach involving women. And I say this because I've seen so many companies institute a program, perhaps on the part of HR, and not involve women in that, you know, in the bounds of what they're coming up with, what they're doing. Or if they do involve women, it's only the senior tier, VPs and above, let's say. What's the problem with involving senior women alone?
You don't groom the next generation of female leaders.
Right, you don't groom the next generation. Their lived experience isn't necessarily what a junior woman's feeling, what a mid-level woman's feeling, what a woman who just joined the company brand new is experiencing. So you need that diverse mix. You don't want to just highlight the top of the top. Here's a good reason why. There was a law firm who was losing top-level women, senior women, and they thought we have to do something about this. And so what did they do? They implemented part-time partner tracks. You know, surely that will help the problem. Well, it was an unmitigated disaster. It was not something that went over well. And when they stopped and finally consulted the women and said, okay, what would you have liked? What was wrong here? Women said, only we used it. No men used part-time roles. And so it was stigmatized. It was kind of a mommy track. That's how it was seen around the company. Okay, well, what would you like? And the women said, you know what I want? I want a full-time partner role. I want all the perks and the clout of being a real partner. I want to be paid like a partner. You know what I want? I want some flexibility when I need it. Real flexibility if I need it to manage my life. Anyone a parent in this room? Okay, especially if you have school-age kids, you know that, the international oh bleep symbol heard round the world in the middle of your workday is your phone ringing and, the school nurse calling to say, you got to come pick up this kid. Right? You got to cancel all your meetings that day, go attend to it. That's the kind of thing these women wanted, to be able to have the latitude to manage something like that. I thought that was such a great story. Maybe the law firm's heart was in the right place, but talk to the women, involve the women. When we don't, we diminish women. And I've collected data, I've studied women in tech in particular, and 40% of them, even women at the senior levels, say, I feel diminished by my organization's culture. I don't feel seen and heard on a level that I should. I want to tell you about a really courageous woman, Paige Azevedo. You might have read about her in the New York Times. She was in brand communications at Nike, working, doing excellent work, but for years she was passed over for promotions. And one day she was gifted a boss who humiliated her, called her names and others, completely inappropriate in behavior. And when she reported it to upper management, does anyone know what happened? So one guess is nothing. What? Retaliation? Lost her job. The man was promoted. I mean, if your blood's not boiling right now, right? The man was promoted. What this launched was Nike, the women at Nike, launching this covert survey to ask other women, are you being treated inappropriately? Are you facing gender discrimination? Are you being sexually harassed? And in fact, there was this critical mass of women experiencing that. And that survey report landed on the desk of a top executive. It led to walkouts of executives who had done others wrong, firings, a huge PR scandal. Today, Nike is struggling in the women's sportswear department. They're losing out to Old Navy and Lululemon, and you have to wonder, if a lot of this starts with not listening to your own. When I think about Paige and people like her, and maybe you've experienced this from a gender bias perspective, when you're doing the daily blocking and tackling of, preventing gender bias or mitigating it, what is it really hard to do? Your job, your darn job, to just do the A+ work you're there to do, that you're hired to do. We all have finite resources, and this is one more reason, we kind of have to wake up and realize this puts an undue load on women. Some things we can do differently around this. One is to make sure there's a women's network, but a powerful one that has the CEO's ear. Not like a proxy to the CEO or the assistant to the CEO, but the real, actual CEO. That's one of the things I've noticed in the best companies. The other thing is to make sure you've got junior and senior women leading that work. You've got women of different backgrounds. You've really taken your time to get a cross-cut of women leading on behalf of women. And that just like you go to the doctor, for the checkup proactively, that you're doing the same. You're surveying women. You're saying, what do you need to not just survive here at this company, what do you need to thrive? You have to wonder, if Nike had done that, could they have avoided some of what women had to take into their own hands and do? Say, hear me, listen to me. I've seen one or two of you taking pictures in the back. I want to invite you, if any of you would like the slides from today, you can text like a boss to 33777. You'll also get on a once a month newsletter list. And I'm going to raffle off at the end one of my books, and I'm happy to sign it and personalize it to one of you, whoever wins. All right. Let's talk about this second piece, which is getting a little more transparent, open, and honest at work. This matters because 71% of employees think employers should do more of this, should be more transparent. And why shouldn't they? You know, one of you brought up Glassdoor earlier, the website. If we're looking for a job, all we need to do is go to Glassdoor and see what it's really like to work there. If we want to go to a restaurant, where do we go to check out what it's like? Yelp, right? We Yelp it, and instantly we know how good that fettuccine is. Same thing with the hotel, with TripAdvisor. Why shouldn't we expect a level of transparency at work? That's the world we're living in now. And yet lots of people feel spoon-fed information in a really incomplete way. Here's something really neat that I think Buffer did. Buffer is a technology company, and what they found was that they were paying people inequitably. Now, they could have done a salary study or a research study and fixed those inequities, but they took it a step further. And they actually opened the books. So they have an open, transparent pay system today. The CMO can see what the most junior person makes. You know, the brand new intern who comes in knows what the CFO makes. It's that open. And what they say is that it breeds high trust in their organization to have that transparency, and that it keeps them accountable. Right? Talk about radical candor. Talk about radical candor. It makes me think that must trickle into other aspects of their culture too. But here's the thing. I think a lot of employees today, especially what we know about millennials, they don't just want transparency in terms of tangible things like this. They want transparency on a human being level too. Authenticity. To know I can be myself around here and that other people are authentic, right, and act like themselves around here. That there's psychologically safe cultures where you can be yourself. Some of the hallmarks of those cultures are that there's friendly debate. You know, you can go back and forth a few rounds with people and you don't have to agree. Same with knowing that there's tolerance for mistakes. Like we said, move fast and break things earlier. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to not get it right every single time. Another thing they do is they have shared airtime. That lesson you learned in kindergarten, to take your turn. They tend to not have meetings with over-talkers, you know, who dominate the whole thing. But instead, there's an expectation everyone talks. Everyone contributes. And one of my favorites, there are personal stories. Two, I heard recently a woman executive sharing about a health scare she had had with her team. A male executive sharing pretty openly with his team what it was really like to have a special needs child. And some of what had gone into that last weekend for him and his family. Right? I'd like you to do just a really short exercise to test this out yourself. And it's called the connector. It's something you can do with your own teams and change and modify. But with the person next to you, I want you to take a few minutes and just share what is a task you had to set aside or leave in order to come to this conference today. What is a competing task you had to put aside? And just take a few minutes to swap that with each other. Go ahead. Okay, let's come back together. You had to miss a lot of stuff, it sounds like, to come to this. What was it like for one of you that heard from a few people? What was it like after you heard some of the things they had to leave behind? Anybody get a new viewpoint, a new lens on things? Yeah. Great. So she was with somebody who said, I had to leave behind nothing. Hey, that's all right. That's all right.
So on the return side, I think something that clicks with me is the timing sometimes of certain things can be horrible. So I was with somebody who said that she just gotten something new on her plate with two team members, and that's timing-wise, of course, always. And there's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can delegate about that. It is what it is.
Yeah, that's right. And just to recap for anyone who didn't hear, on one side someone said, hey, I didn't have to leave anything for this. On the other side someone said, I just had 2 team members leave. Was it? Join. And I had to leave that, right, to come here. When you do this, you tend to get new perspectives and avenues, more depth about the people you work with, and you have more empathy. You know, on a really simple level, you have more understanding for them. You have more transparency. You have more trust. Try it next time you're with team members, and maybe you're having an especially tough week where you're riding out lots of long hours, or you're at an offsite. I promise you'll leave with that deeper understanding, that better transparency about each other. Our third piece here is getting really honest about face time. And I put this in here because almost 80% of employees believe that if you want to get promoted, increasing face time is a key piece of this, even now in 2019. And it's I don't know about you, but I don't want to think this is true. And yet, I think in a lot of workplaces, still the person who comes in first and leaves latest gets the gold, even now. On the flip side of face time, putting those hours in the office is a big rally cry for there to be more flexibility. And of course, I agree with that. But I don't think it's the whole story. I don't think just giving women, for example, flexibility is going to solve that leadership issue. Because as long as women are the only ones using certain benefits, like we've seen, they're not really going to take root. So, one of my suggestions, revolutionary thought here, is to set targets for men to use flexible work, so that more men are using part-time, remote work, that they're taking their paternity leave. Only 1/3 of men today take their paternity leave, in part because they feel stigmatized doing it. Well, let's set actual goals to change that, so that it's not just a women's issue, you know, this idea of flexibility. How about celebrating people who have boundaries for a change? You know, we talked about hero stories, holding up and propping up certain figures in the company. How about holding up people who leave at a reasonable time, you know, and aren't prone to overwork? One of my favorites is creating more of a gig economy, a gig marketplace in your company, so that there's lots of juicy opportunities and roles and project-based work. Whether you're remote, you're in-house, you're a retiree who wants part-time work, whatever it is. You're a millennial with 3 employers. But there's kind of equal access to great, meaty opportunities. I love that Gail Sulky did this for herself in her own career. She was a head of OD at Thomson Reuters. She liked that role, but she said, hey folks, I'd like to do this half-time, because I'd like to run my own coaching business and start that the other half of my time. And you know what? She did it. She did it. And she said, it's nice to be independent, but affiliated with a team in an organization, and to contribute at the highest level. Talk about a woman who knew she had some choices in front of her, maybe saw one route, you know, A and B, and said, I'm going to invent the non-existent option C. her own hybrid career. What could that hybrid be for you? I want to talk about this last piece today around expanding how we think about leadership. Expanding how we think about this. In the surveys I've done around women in tech, again, knowing this is a senior group of women, I think it was worth celebrating that 94% said, people see me as a leader in my area of expertise. Awesome, right? Great. But that same group said this. 30% agree that I can showcase my full power, my full authority without holding back. How can that be? I would argue it's culture. It's culture, which enables us to really roar and lead without hesitation, or has prescriptive stereotypes in place, right, that make us walk more of a tightrope. There's a really important piece of data you should know about if you haven't heard about it, and it's called the Athena Doctrine. And this was a study done around the world in all different countries with men and women, and it had this one striking conclusion. And I think you're all gonna like this conclusion. Ready? The world would be a better place if men thought more like women. Go ahead, clap for that. I think that's clap worthy. You see, for adults altogether, for millennials, for men, that there's strong agreement here. And these researchers took it a step further. They came up with 10 attributes that are most desired in modern leaders. And this is how it turned out. Most seen as feminine leadership traits. 8 out of 10. Expressive, plans for future, reasonable, loyal, flexible, patient, intuitive, collaborative. You already knew these things, but now we have the receipts, to back it up. We know that. Women, you are ideally suited to lead the future of work. Ideally. And even though there's wonderful statistics like this, even though there's compelling proof, we as a society are more likely to enjoy the convenience of automation before we're likely to reach widespread gender parity. Even though we have this compelling data telling us otherwise. It leaves me with a question, one that makes my teeth itch, which is, where's the sense of urgency on the part of companies and leaders and cultures? You all know what it's like at your organizations when there's an urgent project, when there's a mission critical project. You know how that's treated. It's like, move out of the way. We've got to get this done. And yet, why are we slow walking it in so many organizations? Here's a shortcut. If you're looking at 2 jobs and you're wondering, is there a sense of urgency? Look at the leadership team today. Is it 1/3 or more women? If it is, there probably is some commitment there, and there probably is some sense of urgency. If there's not, there's probably not. A quick thought experiment I'd like to do with you. Raise your hand if you keep all of your New Year's resolutions every year. Anyone? Oh, wow, we see an enthusiastic yes. We're totally taking your workshop after this to understand how to do that. Now, how many of you manage to brush your teeth every day? Okay, a lot of relieved faces that this room brushes their teeth, which is great. What's the difference? What was that? Habit. Yes, habit. We ritualize brushing our teeth every day, and so we get it done. It's a habit. It's built into our day. We don't even think about it, do we? What if we applied the same thinking to interrupting gender bias at work? So it stops being this lofty goal, like a New Year's resolution, And it's something that's baked into our everyday processes. From hiring to flexing to workers, to training them, to promoting them, to paying them right. I think an important paradigm shift. As we close in here, I wanted to show you what I think is a really hopeful glimmer of the future, which is a company called DDI came up with something called the empathy machine. And it's using virtual reality to show executives how gender bias feels. You go into this world and you're cut off, you're talked over, you're dismissed. It has led to the people who've done it, most of whom have been men, to sweat profusely. Some men have cried at the end. One person flipped a table over. So talk about, right, big feelings. But I think a brilliant use of technology to show rather than to tell what gender bias feels like. Great name, the empathy machine. That's exactly what it is. We talked today about how women are ideally suited to lead the future. And I think a key piece of that is to know your value, to know your currency and what it is you do, what you do well, so that you can articulate it to anyone who comes by. It's easy for you to talk about it. You can't unsee it. You know your value that well. So I think for all of us, know your value and then add acts. What are little things we can do after today? Small things we ourselves can do to agitate cultures and support other women. One thing is recommend women for conferences like this, to come to them, to learn, or to speak and be on stage. Nominate yourself while you're at it. Amplify women on social media. Such a small thing that can have an impact, though. You know, validate that they're an expert in something. Promote them. Take a woman to lunch who couldn't come to this 2-day event, and tell her what you learned. You know, be that mentor. Tell her what your big takeaways were from all of these sessions. While you're at it, invite a man to coffee and tell him some of the actions he can take, or maybe what it's been like for you. If you've faced bias, maybe you've had that time of being passed over. What could they do? We've talked about 4 ways to build women-forward cultures today. I want to ask you, and we'll skip the poll part, but just to maybe say out loud, what's one thing you would like to do differently after today? What's one thing you could do to contribute to cultures that are that much more inclusive? Yes?
And I don't know if I know that answer, but I think what I would love to see, I have the opportunity as being, you know, being able to, I can hire women for that, but a big concern is I do hire a lot of women leaders, and I don't want it to be counterproductive. They're like, oh, she only hires women leaders because that's, I think the answer is how do we train our male colleagues in those same situations to have authentic communication and conversations.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for leaders to see that, yeah, I was looking at that list of 10. Some of my female leader candidates have 8 of those, and the males don't, but there's so much, you know, chest pounding to train our male leaders on how do they promote that. Because I think if it's always female leadership doing it, I have this fear
Mm-hmm.
it could eventually become very counterproductive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is an overwhelming need for men to be part of this conversation. I just did a male allies workshop this week, and it was refreshing to have that room be 60% men. You know, saying, you are likely to pick people like you. You have, as a human being, an overwhelming urge, right, to call on and pick people like you. So I couldn't agree more with you, to urge those conversations and that participation from men.
I would challenge everyone to find a way to incorporate men into female leader-specific events. So I see there's one gentleman up front, and I think it's amazing that somebody's here. But my organization just put on a women's leadership conference with the LGBT involved.
I love it. I love it. Like natural champions. There are already some natural champions. You know, use that momentum.
I just would say, even and to build off that, one thing that I think we maybe missed the mark on is rewarding good behavior, rewarding, making sure that we are highlighting power partners and the allies. And I know that there are some, one award, the Women of Inspiration Award, they have a power partner award. So it's a woman's award network that nominates men that are supporting women. So I think that there needs to be that reinforcement of, hey, look at my partner or my colleague is being recognized for supporting. Maybe I should step up and, I think a lot of people want to be recognized.
You're right. Make them the hero when they're doing it, when you're catching someone doing good. Make a big deal about that. I love it. One more? Anyone? Yeah, in the back.
Hi, it's more of a comment than anything else. One of the things that I've heard from males recently about mentoring or sponsorship is now they're afraid to mentor because of this whole Me Too movement. So how do you get them past that barrier so that they can feel comfortable? Because now they're like, oh, I don't want to be in a room alone, especially if they're younger, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, I do have strong feelings about that, and you're right, and there's data to back up that more men statistically say they're uncomfortable being alone with a woman. And so you have people making suggestions like, well, only meet in a brightly lit public place at exactly, under all these perfect conditions. And I reject that. To me, it's act like a human being, have a standard for how you treat people. Don't be inappropriate and cross lines. And that doesn't answer your question about getting more men involved, but I think it's having them in the forums. I think it's having uncomfortable, brave, courageous conversations where men and women are present. I think that's the only way forward. The awkward, gritty, uncomfortable questions. One more comment.
So I had one thing, I'm a chemist, I've been a chemist all my life, and we talk a lot about how few STEM positions will lead to leadership, and what I found was I've always had male mentors, and when I've reached out to women, they're always too busy. So if we can be less busy or appear less busy, so we're more approachable to be mentors to others, that may be what's necessary as well.
I love that feedback. I mean, you think of busyness and you think of a woman. You think of a woman who's going from meeting to meeting and then many, many other commitments. I'm a big believer, and one of the things I learned from so many of the women I interviewed was to be really good at saying no. I mean, I said, how'd you get there? And so many of them said, it's not always what you say yes to, it's what you say no to. So I couldn't agree more. Okay, last comment, yeah.
I'm also, since that happened my whole career, so if I can just add to that, a lot of times also it's not just being busy, but I get women that say, well, I don't have the influence with the men, and so I don't feel comfortable then mentoring somebody else because I couldn't give you chances. And I think that maybe mentoring somebody as a woman is also a chance for you to step up and actually have that confidence and reach out to whoever you need to for your mentee.
That's great. Yeah, mentor away, sponsor, right? Pound the table for that person's promotion, for their advancement. That's right. Tell the world why they're ready today, right now, this minute, not 2 years from now. I want to leave you with this thought today from Sally Hogshead, one of my favorite quotes. The world isn't changed by people who sorta care. Right? All of us have the power to make a change. You and you and you and you are shaping the future of work right now. It's not happening to us. We're doing this. Who's somebody in your life whose goal you could listen to, like my professor did for me, and say, that's a nice dream you have, now think bigger. I hope for all of you, you'll be bold, you will go for it, and that you'll pull other people up with you. Thank you so much.